Story time about how my social media is completely fake and I've gotten lots of surgery. Disclaimer is not my story time. Was sent to me on Instagram. I'm an influencer / model nepo baby. My parents are in reality TV. My mom got a lot of surgery back in the 90s and I do not look like my mom because of it. When I turned 16, my parents let me get surgery to look more like my mom. I got my nose done and lip filler. And this helped me go viral on Instagram. People praised me for my beauty and for looking like my mom. I was able to reach 100,000 followers on my own. And for my 18th birthday, my parents bought me another 100,000 followers. Most of my followers were fake. That's when I started making $10,000 a post. So I got more surgery. Part 2 is up. Story time about how my social media following is completely fake and I've gotten lots of surgeries. After my parents bought me 100K followers, brands were paying me left and right. I made $100,000 in 2 months. With the money I was making, I decided to get more surgery. I got a brow lift, cheek filler, and liposuction. By the way, this was 8 to 7 years ago. At that time, everyone was talking about those detox teas. The brand approached me and they were paying me 10K per post. But then my followers all started getting angry. People started noticing that I had lipo belly. If you don't know what that is, please Google it. I started losing followers, so I had to buy more. I had to give them money back. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my social media is completely fake and I got lots of surgeries. Started to get canceled because of the products that I was promoting on my Instagram. I was getting paid more than $10,000 a post. I mean, what do you expect? And I got filler in my hips and my butt. At the time, the Kardashians were super popular for that. Well, fast forward 8 years later, I had to get my lips, my butt, my hips dissolved. In total, I spent over $150,000 on surgeries. I'm still making lots of money on social media though. People are always trying to cancel me because they're jealous. I got invited to be on a reality TV show, but I feel like people will start noticing all my surgeries then. What should I do? Story time about how I found out I was born from incest. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Was sent to me on Instagram. Growing up, I always wondered why we didn't have a family. I mean, I had both my parents, but we never visited my grandparents, cousins, parents until I turned 15. That's when I started getting curious and I started asking questions. Finally, I asked my parents about my grandparents. I remember meeting them when I was a kid. That's when my dad got really upset. He told me to stop asking questions because we didn't need family. I immediately went onto Facebook. It wasn't hard to find my aunt, my mom's sister. I messaged her and she told me something disturbing. She said my mom and dad were related. They were half brother and sister. Part 2 is up. Story time about how I found out I was born out of incest. Disclaimer is not my story time. It's sent to me on Instagram. When my aunt told me the disturbing truth. My mom and dad were half brother and sister. According to my aunt, when they were in high school, they always spent time together. Everyone just thought they were best friends. But apparently my aunt walked in on them making out one day. When she told her parents, my grandparents, they obviously freaked out and tried to separate them. That's when they tried to send my dad to a military school. 1 week before they sent him, my mom and dad decided to run away together. They finally ran away and never spoke to their family again until I was born. My grandmother begged them to get rid of me. My parents kept me. Part 3 is up. Story time about how I found out I was born out of incest. Disclaimer is not my story time. It's sent to me on Instagram. After I was born, my grandmother begged my mom to give me up for adoption. My parents were both 18 when they had me. Not only were they jobless, they were also half brother and sister. Since my parents had run away from home, my grandparents didn't want to help them financially. Luckily, my parents started their own business and they are successful today. Finding out that my parents are half brother and sister, I understand our family history and why we were never close to our family. Finally confronted my parents and they denied everything. I decided I'd do the same thing they did. I ran away for 3 nights, hid in my bestie's basement. Finally, my parents came over and told me the entire truth. My parents do love me, but they keep me away from my family. What should I do? Should I forgive them? Story time about how my crush sent my nudes to my family and my friends. Disclaimers are not my story time. It's not on Instagram. I'm 17 going on 18. I've had the same high school crush since I started high school. He's the most popular boy in school. He's definitely a player. He gets all the girls, but then he pretends to be all innocent and pure. My problem was that I never realized how evil he was. Evil incarnate, like the devil. A little backstory. When I finally grew out of my awkward stage, boys started noticing me more, including the devil. He started trying to sit next to me every single day. At first, I loved this. I mean, hello, he was my crush for 4 years. Slowly but surely, he started talking to me and finally asked me for nudes. Part 2 is up. Story time about how my crush sent my nudes to my family and my friends. Disclaimer is not my story time. It's sent me on Instagram. After giving me the tiniest bit of attention, he asked me for nudes. And what did I do? You better believe I sent them to him like the dumbass I am. I literally got up to go to the bathroom in school and took some nudes. And I sent them to him. Then he led me on for about 2 weeks. He made me believe that he liked me and we started texting every day. He even snuck into my room one night and made out with me for like 2 hours. I thought he was like in love with me or something. Then one day I woke up to a horrible message. My friend telling me that my nudes had been leaked. Part 3 is up. Am I the asshole for stealing money from my broke-ass boyfriend? Disclaimer is not my story time. Was sent to me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have been together for 6 months. When we first met, he got fired from his job, so I decided to start paying for a few things. For example, every time we go to dinner, or sometimes when we go on dates. But it's gotten to the point where I'm literally paying for everything. And now he doesn't even say thank you for it. He just expects it. Every time I tell him to look for a new job, he starts making up excuses. It's like he got comfortable having me pay for everything. One day I went to his wallet and I took out a 20. And then I did it the following week. I used that money to pay for his stuff. Part 2 is up. Best friend told my parents that I lost my V card because she was jealous. 2 months ago, I started dating a new guy at our high school. He was the new guy in school and every girl wanted to be with him, including my best friend. Now, before this, my best friend and I had never had any problems between us. She never showed herself to be envious or jealous of me, so I trusted her. And I literally told this girl everything. The new guy started showing me a lot of attention. He followed me on Instagram and DM'd me right away. Apparently, I reminded him of his ex, who he was obsessed with. One morning, my best friend and I are hanging out before class starts. The new guy walks up to us, says good morning to us both, and then asks me if he could talk to me privately. That's when my best friend says, "You can talk in front of me. I'm her best friend and she trusts me." So then he proceeded to ask me out in front of her. The look on her face was terrifying. She was so pissed off. Of course, I said yes and he walked away. That's when my best friend said, "Oh my god, he's kind of ugly. Did you smell his breath? It stinks really bad. Why would you ever go out with that guy?" Then she says, "You better not go out with him." Part 2. When she said, "You better not go out with him or I'll tell your parents." I looked at her and said, "You wouldn't dare." She's like, "You're right, I wouldn't." By the way, my parents were very strict. They'd never let me go out on dates, much less have a boyfriend. The weekend comes around and I'm getting prepared for my date. So I told my parents that I was going to be with my best friend the entire weekend. And of course, they believe me. I sent her a text message saying, "Hey, I told my parents I'm going to be with you. So if they ask you, you got to cover for me." She says, "Of course I will." I go on the date with the new guy and it was so much fun. For the first time ever, I was treated like a girl. He held my hand, he was kissing my neck, and he paid for everything. Like I said, up until that point, I'd never really had an experience like that. I was falling for him quick. We'd gone to watch a movie and at the movie theater he started kissing me. Of course I kissed him back. That's when he asked me if I wanted to go back to his house because his parents weren't home. And I said yes. As we're driving to his house, I was so excited. So I texted her out of excitement telling her that I was going to be going back to his house. She replied and told me that I was a slut and that I was being too easy. She even asked me to send her a picture of what I was wearing, which I did. Then she replied, "You'd look like a slut." Then we got to his house and we started making out again. Part 3 is up. That's when we started doing the dirty in his room. All while my best friend is slut-shaming me. Could hear her messages come in as we're on his bed. I grab my phone and silence it and see that I have about 20 text messages from her. I read the first one and it said, "You better not be effing him right now, or I will tell your parents." But of course I ignored them. I was doing it with this guy. But to be honest, it ended pretty quickly. As I'm getting dressed, he says, "Do you need me to drop you off at your best friend's, or can you stay and have dinner with me?" This boy was trying to cook me dinner. Of course I said yes. I text my best friend and tell her, "Why are you being so mean?" I told her that nothing happened, but she wouldn't believe me. That's when I told her that he was going to make me dinner at his house, and this is when she got even angrier. She said, "Why is he making you dinner? What did you do to have to get that dinner?" I told her nothing and she wouldn't leave me alone. That's when she started calling my phone. Of course I didn't answer. 3 minutes later, I get a call from my mom. I answered right away and pretended to be at my best friend's. And that's when my mom told me that my best friend called her and told her the truth. So I couldn't lie anymore. Took me to my parents' house and they were furious. My parents told this boy that he has to marry me. He literally ran away. I ran out of time. Part 4 will be up soon.
Story time about how I realized my neighbor kept staring up my skirt at my fucking vagina. Okay, back in 2016, I moved into a new apartment on Melrose Avenue. I was right by Paramount Studios, and it was like living the dream. I started noticing weird things. Like every time I came out of my apartment, my neighbor would come out of his apartment, and he was in the floor below me, so he could directly look up at me when I was coming out of my apartment and walking down the stairs. Me being a perceptive woman, I realized that he was doing that on purpose. It's not like I was like, "Oh my god, how funny, he's just coming out at the same time I am." No, girl, every single time coming out at the same time I did. And why? Because I tended to wear a lot of dresses and skirts like you normally do. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. One day I come out of my apartment and he's there again, standing at his door in boxer shorts and his gut hanging out, staring at me underneath my skirt. So I look down at him and I'm like, "Hi, what's up? What are you looking at?" He decides to not say anything and just stares at me. I go downstairs and I stand in front of his door and I can see his wife is in the back. And I say to her, "Hola, ¿cómo está?" That's when he shits his pants and he's like, okay. "Sorry, look, I just think you're really pretty." His wife is like listening to the conversation and didn't say anything, which leads me to believe that this guy probably is, I can't assume, for you to flirt with another woman in front of your wife, that's abusive. That's a form of abuse, you know, legit. Then he starts asking me 1,000,001 questions.
Time on the firing line, 'cause everybody knows better than you. You got your boys in the corner,
caught my husband making out with his male coworker. You didn't know he was gay. Welcome to the confessional, a series where you guys send me your story times through here and I tell them here on TikTok so you can get some genuine advice. My husband and I have been married for 6 years. Now I know why he never wanted to have kids, you think? We both met in college and back then I knew he was bisexual. We got engaged 2 years later after graduation and everything was perfect. Him being bisexual never bothered me and it never made me feel insecure up until a month ago. Some new guy started working at his job and all he could do was talk about his new coworker. I was actually happy for my husband because he found a friend at work. Every single day he would come home talking about his new bestie, which means that he couldn't stop thinking about him even when he was home. This is around the time that he started hanging out with his coworker outside of work. My husband would be gone for hours because every time they'd hang out, they'd go rock climbing or some sort of activity that required them to be outside for hours. My husband would always come home really tired and always had an excuse as to why he never wanted to have sex. Oh man, I'm sorry, babe. Slowly but surely, he would always be making plans every single weekend to hang out with his coworker. And whenever I asked him to hang out with me, he'd give me attitude and tell him that I was giving him zero freedom. The more he'd snap at me, the more suspicious I would get. He one day came home from one of his quote-unquote hikes with a huge hickey on his neck. And when I asked him about it, he told me that it was a bruise. On top of everything, he's a terrible liar. I have to look when I'm doing my eyeliner, sorry. That's when I knew right away that my husband was this guy. The more questions I would ask him, the angrier he would get. This is when I went into full investigative mode. I began following him to his job, and I started following him on his lunch breaks. I knew I needed to be patient so that I could catch them in the act. There was sexual tension between them. And this is where it gets interesting. Okay, give me a sec. Their routine consisted of going to lunch, going back to work for 2 hours, and then getting off work both at the same time. They would both get into their respective cars and drive to an empty parking lot in front of a Walmart. The second time I saw them pull up at the Walmart, I couldn't help myself. I got out of my car, started recording, and caught them in the act. My husband and his coworker were full on making out, grabbing each other's crotches. My husband's coworker got out of his car and ran to his car. The man ran away. The man was too stunned to speak. Then my husband did the unexpected. He locked the car doors, didn't let me in, and drove away. Oh my God, he seriously straight up didn't care. He just left you there? I drove back home expecting to find my husband, but he was not there. 2 hours later, I'm sitting on the couch waiting for my husband to come home, only for him to send me a text message that he was moving in with his coworker. So I did what any reasonable wife would do. I called his mother. His mother is able to control him with the snap of her fingers. Mama's boy much? Who knows what she said to him, but he came home 20 minutes later with his tail in between his legs. He told me he broke off the relationship with his coworker and that he's even willing to quit his job. Puchica. Esta está difícil. I don't know whether or not to believe him. This is the first time, as far as I know, that he's cheated. The only way I told him I would take him back is if he agrees to have children with me. Ready for my 2 cents? I would say leave him. He might do this again. You do not want to have children with somebody you can't trust. Every booty needs a good pre-workout smoothie. Booty knows what it wants, so feed it. Of all the smoothies I post, this is the one you should really be making. It's full of antioxidants because of the matcha. The banana gives you the energy you need to work out. And there's collagen and chia seeds in there. Great for your skin, hair, and nails. FML, I love you guys, bye.